Alright, what's going on, you guys? It's your boy 3 Stickity Stacks in this thing, baby, representing TKOG. And today I'm coming at you guys with an update for Paleozoic frogs. So if you ask me, when it comes to trap decks, this is the best trap deck. It's only second to the only deck that comes close for me, which would be second place, is Altergeist. I think when it comes to trap decks, there's a lack of depth in basically what they can do, like how they interact. And what I've always really liked about Paleozoics is they're one of the few trap decks that can put up a card to negate cards like Evenly and Lightning Storm on their first turn, and Feather Duster, which is like the bane of trap decks, all the back row hate. There's more back row removal, I feel like, than there is removal for combo boards. Like, you've got like Kaiju's, Lava Golem, and like Spear Mode. But then like for back row decks, there's like Twin, Cyclone, Night Beam, Feather Duster, Reboot, Evenly Matched, Lightning Storm. That's not even everything. I mean, there's just so much back row hate, it's ridiculous. Like Hey True Nade. There's just so much that when you're playing a trap deck, there's so much that you have to worry about that it can give you anxiety worrying about everything that could possibly happen to you. But there's a sense of security that comes with Paleozoics, and that's what I really like about him. And when it comes to it being a trap deck, it has its own toolbox. Like, it has a unique toolbox to deal with a lot of situations that will occur, like your Book of Moon, your Karma Cut, your MST, your pretty much your ability to swarm the field and generate a lot of critical mass. Tempo can change. On the activation of a trap card, your tempo can change, which is pretty interesting that out of all decks, like this and Altergeist actually accelerate their tempo by activating traps, which is super duper nice. I think Paleozoics are in a great place. They're just an amazing, well-rounded deck. There are some changes that I want to make to my list. I want to play the Shark cards. I want to be able to end on Abyss Dweller or, Bahamut Shark Toad first turn to counter back row hate even more. And also, when I get the Shark package, I want to put the Dogmatica cards in so that I can have some form of diversity in my interactions, so that all my interactions aren't solely coming off of the back of trap cards or hard drawing Swap Frog in the water, which happens, seldomly. But with all of that said, oh yeah, I forgot to do it in the last video, but please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. If you haven't done it already, subscribing is more important so that you can stay in tune with everything that I have coming towards you in the future. And also, if you would like to support my channel in any way, shape, or form, whether it's buying my merchandise, donating through Patreon, PayPal, etc., or just joining the Discord and becoming a member of the community, those are options available to you, but you don't have to do any of that to be able to just stay tuned for the content. With all that said, let's go ahead and start this list. So we have, obviously, low rarity. Everything's low rarity in this deck. Triple Swap Frog, Triple Dupe Frog, one Flip Flop Frog. This one probably would be the only one that you would have to talk to, because this is no way, shape, or form is this a standard deck choice. Flip Flop Frog, I feel like, is a one-of that should be in every Paleozoics list. I feel like they either don't respect the card or they don't even know it exists, because it is very old, just like the frogs are. What it gives you is a form of interaction that does not target or destroy, which I think a lot of the times Paleozoics struggle with cards that can't be targeted. Because like your toolbox is so good, right? Like your Paleozoic cards are so good, but a lot of the times they have to target, and they have to target for cost, so they can't even be activated unless they could target something. So you do have an issue. You'll struggle with cards like Dragoon. Back when like Dark Destroyer was a thing, it was really annoying for this deck to deal with, but not impossible. The rank 2 toolbox and the link spam that this deck can pull off helps to kind of cover that ground, but just having an in-archetype out that you can just summon off of Totally Awesome and just access anytime is pretty amazing. That you can flip this, bounce cards, and then set it back up, and then flip it again. And every turn, you're just going to be dismantling your opponent's resources. I like Flip Flop Frog a lot. I think it's definitely slept on. We hate that Duke misses timing, but it is what it is. It's an old card. And then finally, Roni Homie. So we've got Ernesto, we've got Esteban, and we've got Roni Homie. And then, my boy Flippity Flop. So those are the 9 frogs. Basically 7 frogs and 2 Ronis. You draw any one of those 9s with a Paleozoic in hand, you do have a follow-up Toad. And sometimes when you don't draw the frogs, it's okay, because the Paleozoics basically turn into the cards that access the Totally Awesome. So a lot of the times, the deck doesn't look consistent because it's a trap deck, but the amount of Paleozoics that you play can make or break that line where you need to push past the threshold of consistency in the terms of like probs and stats, the odds of opening both a Paleozoic and a frog, or the odds of opening 2 Paleozoics. Because if you don't open a Paleo and a frog, you have to open 2 Paleozoics. If you don't, your follow-up is going to be attack for 1200 and pass. So you want to make sure that when you're building your deck and you're playing Paleozoics, you structure your plays to make sure that you can always get out your Paleozoics from grave, or just have follow-ups in general, because you don't want the games to be prolonged when it's not necessary. So the way I play my Paleozoics is I kind of play it turbo base, where I play a lot more Paleozoics than most people would, and I utilize cards like Waboku to actually protect my Paleozoics, so that the only thing that can kill them is a spell or a trap card. If it's a trap, I chain another Paleo from grave, which is another reason why this deck's like Paleo mirror matches are annoying, and like, you know, Eldritch and Altergeist matchups are a bit easier because their traps give you resources. And then there's other decks that use traps, like, you know, obviously Dogmaticas, and, you know, there's certain decks that just play traps and you can thrive off of that. But I do play my list that way, where like my follow-ups are so explosive. I'm starting off with like Opabenia, searching something, and I start playing my traps from hand and chaining, and before you know it, my first turn might be normal swap, dump a toad, add pass. But then my next turn, I'm sitting on like double totally awesome Opabenia and Anomalocaris, or Anomalocaris Opabenia Toad, and that's just my go-to setup. It just turns ridiculously like it's just so OP, bro. Like, then you're sitting on like monster interruptions and trap interruptions, so you have a level of diversity in your interactions. It's so good. And then we have triple Pot of Desires. It's so free in this deck. You even have Leoncolia to get your banished cards back in case you banish too many frogs. I do play Demise. I think it's a good card to just reset, especially when you've like lost so much. It helps you to recover from blowouts like Evenly and stuff like that. Because then Evenly you're not going to get OTK'd, so it definitely helps. So outside of the frogs and the spells, which are ideal to draw, here are some other cards you would love to draw. I personally love Trap Trick, and I love Reckless Greed in my Paleozoic list. I don't speak for everybody, I only speak for myself. I love these cards. They're very, very powerful. They're free chainable cards to get my Paleos onto field, and they give me a lot of advantage for pretty much little to nothing at all. Sure, they're not defensive cards, but I really do enjoy the amount of resources I can get. These help you to kind of mitigate what you would lose off of Twin Twisters. So you always have to keep in mind the amount of back row hate that exists always will be overwhelming in comparison to what you can do to, you know, combo boards. So you want free chainable cards that can get you value, even if there aren't situations that, like, the circumstances apply, like where TT only can be used on summon. Ice Dragon's Prison can only be used if there's like a target. So then those are chainable in a sense, but these are always free chainable cards. So it's good to have cards in your back row that even if they get sniped, like by Shaddoll Dragon or whatever it is, you can just chain them and get free value. And it makes cards like Cosmic Cyclone and Twin Twisters lose their value because they don't do anything. You get cards for them to lose cards. So I like these for multiple reasons, but I'm really big on Reckless. This card actually turns into almost like an FTK. I'm patient with my Reckless, and when I draw this in Trap Trick, this is just like game. I'm drawing 4 cards. I'm chaining all my Paleos from grave, and I'm going in with Opabenia and Anomalocaris. And after you Reckless, especially when you have Anomalocaris, your Pikachu and your Reckless draw 3 cards now, which is just broken, and your resource management with this deck is just like over the top. When you get your engine going, it's really hard to stop this deck or slow it down. It just snowballs so quickly, and these cards help to attribute to that. The speed and the consistency that you need to be playing a trap deck in 2021, you got to be able to hang with the big dogs. You can't be playing really slow like a Dookie Guru control deck. Sorry, Guru players. And then for other starters, these are basically starter cards. So triple Maria or Morella. What I just call it Maria because I like how that sounds. Rolls off the tongue. But Maria, I really like this card a lot. I think it's one of the best Paleozoic. In the terms of like starting your plays, this is the best Paleozoic. You can dump cards like Lost Wind if you're playing around Dinko Sekka. Dump your Breakthrough skill if you're worried about Dinko. But just dumping Paleos and Grave also off of this turns this into a +2 when you really think about it. Because this card, when it resolves in the circumstances that apply where you have traps to activate, this is a totally awesome. So this card, don't underestimate this. It's very powerful. And dumping Lost Wind so that you make sure that you have playable traps every turn to always be able to chain and keep your pressure up is really good. So I personally love Maria. So these are like starters in the trap form. I really like them a lot. And then I'm on 2 copies of Pikachu. Might as well just be Pantheism. I love this card a lot. I play what I enjoy. and you have to test it more, right? So like people would not play this card, but they won't test it first to see if you dead draw it or if it's good enough. They just will literally not play it because they just think it's bad. Like in testing, this card is absolutely insane. That's why I actually played 2 and not 1, because it comes up a lot, and this card really, oh my goodness. Like when you have this going with your Opabinia, when you have Opabinia up, it just becomes ridiculous, especially with on Malakaris. As long as when you play traps like these, even if they don't do something to your opponent, as long as they can replace themselves and lead into more traps that can, it is okay to play these. Maria gets access to Lost Wind, which is an interruption. These can draw you more playable traps or dig you deeper for like when I start playing my Dogmatica cards and my Sharks. I can see those, or drawing into Swap Frog, which is really important in this deck. And then also Pikachu being able to just draw more Paleos and chain them for free. It's just insane. And then finally, we have 1 Leon Corlia. This card is mainly for like desires, and then if you don't desires, extending your frog plays with Ronin Tonin, this card becomes like when you have Opabinia up and you like banished a frog summon Ronin Tonin to do it that way, you can search Leon Corlia, activate it, chain Paleo, put a frog back, banish it again, summon Ronin Tonin. This card becomes a 1 card totally awesome with Opabinia set up. So like having Opabinia Toad and then all your back rows, it just becomes really good. And this is another thing that it's so fun that I love about Opabinia. This is one of my favorite cards, is that this card, now you can play around Lightning Storm and evenly, because your best traps are the Paleozoics and you can play them from hand, and the card's unaffected by monster effects. So there's no like feasible way to negate that. So it's always going to be able to just play your traps from hand, which is really good. Your Paleozoic specifically. So those are the 12 starter traps. So like this is right here, this is all gas. Like the spells, the only spells you play are the good ones. The draw spells, the frogs. Drawing frogs is really good. Do frog or swap. If you draw Ronin Toadin, it's okay as long as you have a Paleo, and I play quite a few. And then like these are all just extenders or starter cards. Like your traps can be extenders if they're Paleozoics, and that's how you just get your big pushes for your follow-ups. This deck is all about first turn setup, and even if it's not second turn kill, second turn go in. Like I'm going all the way in. Those cheeks getting clapped. Next up we have Triple Dino. Oh, this card is just amazing. Banish any card, like Mystic Mind say what. And then we have 3 copies of Canadia. Oh, card is just so OP. Like these cards right here are just so good. The level of diversity and just how these cards can be used is just ridiculous. These cards are so good. And we cannot forget about our MST. Olenoids is absolutely amazing. This card, I'm telling you, bro, like it's so OP. Like the fact that you have searchable spot removal in this deck in Archetype off of Opabinia. This is why, like, honestly, like sometimes I choose Opabinia over Totally Awesome. I know it sounds crazy. Some people might not agree with me. They'll be like, oh no, Totally every time. Like, I just love the Paleozoic cards and how they work with Opabinia makes them just so good. They're just hand traps. So the 9 good Paleos and then the 6 starter Paleos equal out to 15 Paleozoics. With Trap Trick, you have 18 ways to access a Paleo, 9 frogs. That's essentially 27 starter cards, and then you have 4 draw cards, which gives you essentially 31 ways to access the really integral cards for your deck. Like the cards that make or break your plays, the cards that determine whether you're going to win or not. And then we have Triple Strike. You can't really play any trap decks without Strike. It's too good. You pair this with Torrential, and when I get my Stormings, I don't have Storming, but I do want to play Storming. Right now, I'm liking Waboku and Threatening Roar a little bit more because they're more chainable, they're harder to play around, and they make your Paleozoics just unable to die, like especially against combo, because they're already unaffected by monsters, and it's like you either Kaiju Slumber or bust. You know, my follow-ups can just like OTK you. So like Strike and IDP, probably 2 of the best generic traps in the game. Pair that with Torrential, and you have like the 3 best generic trap cards that any deck can play without any drawbacks, pretty much, except for maybe like Geists. And then we also have Triple Lost Wind. Like these traps right here are like just ideally for me if I had to choose. Like Get Out is cool, Compulse is good. You know, there's so many cool traps you can play. I want to play like Fiend Comedian and Fiend Griffing and Backjack. Fiend Comedian's hilarious because like you either mill Paleos and Frogs or you just banish your opponent's entire graveyard. There's just like no downside to that card. I really want to play it. It's so cool and funny. And then Fiend Griefing, really, really good, right? Just being able to get that value of free chainable trap plus an extra backup track off Backjack and Disrupting the Grave. Too good, right? It's just a 2-for-1 special. But these just cover all grounds. These cards like are not gimmicky. They're not situational. they're normally not even 1-for-1s. A lot of the times these cards are just like gonna seal the deal for you. So these are ideally the traps that you want to draw, the generic ones backed up with your Paleos. These cards just are so nice. IDP is really important, just to have a Dragoon out. Dimensional Barrier was my option prior. I love Dimensional Barrier. I think it's a very good underrated card. It definitely does catch a lot of people off guard. But IDP is less situational and more generically applicable against everything. It's going to help you in every matchup. This deck doesn't really have like a bad shit all matchup. It has a pretty good shit all matchup. It has a pretty good invoked, dogmatic matchup. Pretty good Zodiac Eldritch matchup. It's probably its worst matchup is Dragon Link. And that's just because of Levianeer, to be honest. Like, Levianeer is just like that kind of a card, but this is why I like having all the chainable traps, because you can just get value out of them as they're being popped. But outside of that, I mean, you can even, against combo decks, like as they're playing, when you're chaining all these Paleos from grave and you threatening roar them, they basically can't out your traps, right? And if they try to like Dragon Maid Tidying to target it, you're just gonna chain another Paleo from grave, right? So this is like, it's a lose-lose situation. And now, like, if you have 4 Paleos on field, right? Just for example, and your opponent is sitting there and they like, have like a couple Omni Negates, right? Just for example, you can start your turn with Opabinia or Totally Awesome. And long story short, with multiple Paleos on field, especially if you have like Swap Frog in hand, you can actually break your opponent's board with the follow-up resources that Paleozoics give you, which is really good. Opabinia is unaffected by monster effects. Anomalocaris can attack over something and pop another monster and they can't negate it. They can, but it just won't be negated successfully because it's unaffected. Totally Awesome is just a good way to start all of your plays with protection. So you can easily dismantle combo boards. And going second when you lose the dice roll, you have Dinomisius, Canadia, Strike, IDP, Torrential, Lost Wind. People will try to play around Torrential and still play into IDP. It's really hard to just avoid it all. And you just have so many good chainable traps that are good going first or going second. And even if you don't disrupt all of your opponent's plays, if you're going second and you can just get some Paleos on field and then Wabaku, you can dismantle their board with your extra deck next turn. So there's a lot of good ways that you can still win even going second, losing the dice roll. So that's how I do it. And then the 4 protection traps, which are actually, in my opinion, they're better than Storming or other attack, like battle traps. Storming is good going second when you like pair it with Strike or Lost Wind, because you could break a board, like you just bounce your opponent's cards, they try to negate, you chain Lost Wind or Strike, and it's just like so OP, right? But these are just really reactive. They're a lot harder to play around. In fact, there's just like no way that your opponent can play around these. You can activate these in their draw phase, and there's just nothing they can do except like reboot maybe. But these cards just are so free. These are like the FTK of the deck, because what you want to do is just set up your Paleos and then flip one of these. Free chainable trap, get more Paleos on field, and now they just don't die. And next turn, you're going in, bro. You're about to wash your opponent. So that is the main deck. I love it. Probably do a test hand just to give you an idea of how the deck sets up. And then for extra is totally incomplete because I'm still on the fence. I've actually been waiting for over a month for a Zeus that I won in a luxury tournament. I keep hitting up Hani, like, telling him, like, hey, bro, just don't forget about me. But it's been, like, over a month that I've been waiting for this Zeus, which, again, is, I don't know, bro. Like, I feel like, like, if you pay for your entry and you do your end, you fulfilled your obligation towards the agreement. It's like, where my Zeus at, bro? So I'm supposed to have a Zeus in here, but I'm still waiting on it. I did win it, but it hasn't came. So we have Miss Starboy and also Marine Cess. These don't have a lot, like this has a lot of utility. This doesn't have a lot of utility, but these are the best links in the deck because these replace themselves. They give you better follow-up. These are recyclable because Totally Awesome is just that kind of a card. Miss Starboy recycles itself. It's so good. These cards are just amazing. And then utility, we have like Unicorn. It's okay. It's not like, you don't really need all the nightmares, like for link climbing and stuff. Like, you don't need all of them. Like, Unicorn's just like the best one, and it's the one, like, if I had to pick, I'd pick this one. Access code, sometimes you want Borosword, but like, you just need to clear boards at times, and that's what you're able to do with your resources that you get, because access code can't be responded to. So, like, when you're trying to break a board, if you have to go second, but you had Paleos you could get out, and you Wabaku them, you could just climb up into access code, this card can't be responded to, and that's a good way to just out the board and just keep playing. And then outside of that, like I said, extra deck is totally incomplete. I do want Zeus, and I might just play Bahamut Shark and Dweller. when I get the shards. But we have triple totally awesome card. It's in his name. Like, it's in his name. This card is broken. So like, what's cool about Toad is I say this reference, like, your opponent's deck is yours too. And I'll make sense of that in a second. Every card this card negates unless it's a link monster and unless stipulations are in place where it's in a certain place, like a certain area. There are certain areas cards are at that where Toad can't set it. But long story short, because Toad not only negates a card but takes it, you can play your opponent's archetype specific cards if they apply for you. Like, you could still Nadir Servant and just, you know, if I was playing like my Dogmatica cards, I can get Nadirs. I could still Prosperities and Desires. I could still Twin Twisters and use them against my opponent. Ice Dragons, Prisons. I could take anything from my opponent's deck and use it as my own. So it's like, when you have Toad, you could just make this funny joke where they're like, on draw phase, activate Twin Twisters. And I'd be like, you mean activate our Twin Twisters, right? Because that's both of ours. Let's just clarify that. I'll be taking that Twin Twisters. Thank you, sir. So this card is like +3. It negates. It puts a body on field. It replaces itself. And then on top of that, like, the snowballing factor. So it takes a card, it puts a body on field, and it adds a card from grave to hand. You get 3 cards off of that. And if Toad is allowed to live for more than 1 turn, like, if you set this up on your first turn and it doesn't die, by next turn, it's like a Borosword or an Axis Code. You just get way too much. When you summon Dupe, protect yourself, and then summon a Swap Frog next turn off Toad, it's just like, how are you not winning that duel? Like, Totally Awesome cannot be allowed to resolve more than once. It's just way too much critical mass. It's too much to deal with, and it's too obnoxious that it makes this deck so hard to deal with. Toad is just OP. And then my favorite, Opabinia. I like playing too. I love this card so much. It's like one of my favorite go-tos. And then that boy, Anomalocaris, don't be sleeping on him. After you Reckless, every trap, you're just, once per turn, you know, just a once per turn, you just get to draw. Your traps replace themselves. And that's the thing I love about this deck. It's better than, like, you know, Altergeist and other trap decks in that regard. Even Eldritch, it grinds better and just plays better. It has better matchup. It's just how much your cards replace themselves as you use them. Like, your draw traps, your Paleozoics are replace themselves when they activate, and then engrave, they come back. And then Opabinia and Anomalocaris and Totally Awesome just keep generating more advantage, hand card economy for your hand, you know, field presence. It's just everything. Like, these 6 cards are just the only real ones that every duel I'm guaranteed going into these. Some other cards I might not make. And then I love Cat Shard. Card's so nice. It's a really good way to just get over things with a quick bind, like, especially when you can't link climb the way you want. Get like a 4400 Totally Awesome and just smack over cards like Dragoon pretty easily. And then we have Centuria, another great out to cards like Dragoon. It just doesn't target, doesn't destroy. That's why it's really important to play. It's a good way to, you know, step your way up into Zeus, which, again, don't have my Zeus. I'm still waiting on my Zeus, but let me get like a quick little test hand just so you guys can get the general concept of what I was talking about, like the first turn setup, you know what I mean? Let me just, I got a power shuffle because, you know, everything's organized. So, and I'm going to upload this one unedited and a few other ones because I just need to cover some gaps, just some time periods. I don't really, you know, like, people are really patient. I appreciate you guys, but I don't want you guys to wait too long, you know, for a video from me. So I'm just gonna do it here and there, just letting you guys know in case somebody be like, oh, where's the intro, you know, like, my friend does it for me. I appreciate him. But I have heard people say, you know, that it doesn't bother them that some videos might not have that, and I appreciate that because they're just here more for the content and less for the visual aesthetics. But the visual aesthetics are really nice. I'm not gonna lie. I personally, you know, would like to have it in every video. So we're drawing 2 MST, a Strike, and an IDP and a Wabaku. Yeah, that's like insane. As long as these can be activated, this hand is pretty insane. Not gonna lie, like, the whole hand is playable. So ideally, what you would end up doing is, like, you would just use these. These would end up coming out, basically. You would Wabaku to secure your victory, to make sure that these don't die. And your Strike and IDP would just be there just in case you need them. So going second, this is also really, really good to have Strike and IDP. It's just going to break a board. And going first is ideal because, long story short, like, even worst case, you burn through all your back rows and, like, let's say you're top decking Demise. Oh, that's a horrible top deck because it's not playable. This is already your Totally Awesome right here. Or your Opabinia. It's it's like up to you, right? It's totally up to you. I would say if you go for Opabenia, you should always make sure that you have a way to make a follow-up totally awesome. Otherwise, it's not worth it. So there's your totally awesome. So like that's a really good test hand because you're gonna stop your opponent and then follow up with the toad and start snowballing your resources. And if anything happens, like anything bad happens, you have Card of Demise just as a backup card, just so that you can recover. It's a free draw 3. You can't be mad at that card. That's why it's one of that should be in every Paleozoic list, because it's just too good. When I play my Dogmaticas and my Sharks, then I'm not probably gonna play it because I'll be running too much monsters, and even if I draw it and it's playable, I'm gonna draw probably a bit of monsters and I'm gonna be upset. So this opening hand has Maria, which is broken. I have Maria plus Reckless. I have Lost Wind and Strike, which is really good, and even going second. I have Dupe Frog. So this hand's actually insane. So if I was just to set my Dupe, I would immediately activate my Maria. I'm not afraid of them, having like one less back row to play through. And normally if I see Lost Wind, so I would Maria for Maria because it's the most expendable in this scenario. All the other Paleozoics, I'd rather keep them to activate them and get their value. But once you've activated one Maria, the other ones are basically not really needed. Sometimes you want a Lost Wind for follow-ups. And you just you have all these. Like I wouldn't activate Reckless yet. Like worst case scenario, Dupe Frog dies, right? Let's say it just missed timing, just to be kind of realistic here. We'd still be able to Lost Wind, bring a Paleo out, for example, and just play it like that. Strike your opponent. We're just pretending like Dupe Frog missed timing here. We're drawing a Lost Wind, and what we'll do, and we could just pretend like Lost Wind got set or it didn't. Well, I'm just going to do the worst case scenario. And let's say like draw phase, you drew, so now you're going to activate Reckless and you're going to chain Maria, draw. And we drew Desires and Dino Mischief. So this is where, now having already a Paleo in hand to play, this is where it's like, okay, Maria is definitely, not Maria, Opabenia is definitely worth it because I have Desire. So what I do is Desires first, actually, because if I can draw, basically I want to deck them first. I don't mind certain targets being banished for Opabenia to search because if I can draw into a frog, then I'm guaranteed to go into Opabenia. If I can't, then I might just make Toad and just have the banish. You know what I mean? So we're going to have 3, 5, 8. That's 10 being banished. We're drawing. So we drew 4 cards. We drew Wabaku and the second Dino, and we banished 1 Ronin Totem. That kind of hurts, but is Lee and Qualia banished too? Oh, if it wasn't the icing on the cake, Lee and Qualia. So the whole game we're playing with 1 copy of Ronin, but the Paleozoics are your secondary frogs, if that makes sense. So it doesn't hurt. Now we certainly can make Opabenia and grab our Pikachu. I would certainly grab Pikachu here. This cannot be Ash. It can, but it's unaffected by the Ash. It's so cool. So it's really hard to stop Opabenia, especially against decks that normally their interactions are all coming from monsters, you know what I mean? Like Makaba and Borlo Savage, stuff like that. Heretic Seal, you can't bounce this. It's really good, just really good. I mean, they're affected by spells and traps, but a lot of times monsters are more important for most decks. So you activate Pikachu, chain the Maria, discard obviously a Dino, and we'd be drawing into a Swap Frog and the Threatening Roar. So this is certainly the FTK right here, which is just ridiculous. This is so good. Like the position we're in right now is so good. So we normal swap. We would dump our Roni Homie, and let me see how far we can get, because this is already totally awesome. And if I want to have a better follow-up, I could bounce swap and just banish the dupe, summon Ronin, and have Toad Opabenia. But if I can get to a second Toad, if they have a card to banish, is it worth going Dino, Chain Paleo? Yeah, I think it's worth it. So we go Dino, Chain Paleo. We don't need both Threatening Roar and Wabaku, so I'd probably get rid of... They're both essentially the same thing. I just like Wabaku better. I think Wabaku is just more diverse. So we chain a trap, banish one of their cards. If there was something to do, obviously, something to banish. At this point, this deck just doesn't care about Nibiru. A lot of your cards are just unaffected, so it's just not a good card against this deck, even though you do summon more than 5 times. A lot of the times in your follow-ups, and we'd summon Rodin by banishing the dupe. And we have double Toad plus Opabenia. This is why, again, I really enjoy Reckless, because in this situation, Opabenia is going to help to mitigate Reckless as well as the Totally Awesomes, and your follow-ups are insane, and you can make Automatic and start drawing. So because of how valuable Lost Wind is, you can continue to get chainable traps to keep your Paleozoics floating from the grave. So this is game. This is surely game. If your opponent was barely able to play through what you had set up first, they're more than likely not going to be able to push through 2 Omni Negates, a Lost Wind, and all the follow-ups you're going to get, and having the dupe lock, because pretty sure I should have... Oh, it's not dupe lock, because I only have 1 dupe left, so I would have to summon dupe and probably swap frog and just dump another swap. So that is just showing you ideally how you are going to play this deck, how you're going to set up. You just want your Paleos coming from grave all the time. The Paleozoics are the best cards in the deck. They have more longevity than the frogs, and they oftentimes synergistically lead you to the frogs in the first place. So they are definitely, the Paleozoic traps are like, honestly, some of the best trap cards in the game, because any deck can play Paleozoic traps, and they're just really, really good. My cards are kind of upside down. But with all of that said, I'm going to go ahead and end the video. I'm going to get this prayer in after I fix my cards. Some of them are upside down. That really sucks. I don't know how I did that. But our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Lord Jesus Christ, thy kingdom come, and thy will be done on earth just as it is in heaven. Please give us this day our daily bread, Lord Jesus, and please forgive us of our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, Father, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the glory, and the power forever. In the mighty name of Jesus, I pray. Thank you, Father. Amen. All right, y'all. Peace.